The armed forces have driven the occupiers out from key sections of the front. Zelensky, together with Europeans, is preparing to meet Trump. Who will go, and how might the war end? It's 7:30 on the clock. I'm Irina Kondrachuk, and this is TSN Online. Give us a cheerful like and subscribe to our channel for the most up-to-date news today. The president of Ukraine is currently in Brussels, holding a series of meetings with European leaders from the coalition of willing countries. World diplomats have gathered to work on a unified position regarding the situation in Ukraine ahead of President Zelensky's talks with Trump, which are scheduled to take place tomorrow. The head of European diplomacy, Ursula von der Leyen, has called this day a time when Ukraine will decide its fate and said that our country needs to become a steel porcupine in order to defend its freedoms. President Zelensky is convinced that it is necessary to work quickly on the final agreement. He seeks real negotiations, which should begin at the current front line. Also, at the press conference in Brussels, the president of Ukraine presented his vision in response to Putin's plan, or the agreement, as Trump calls it, that was reached in Alaska. President Zelensky is convinced that first, the ceasefire must be established, and only then should work on a peace treaty begin. And this is a fundamental point, because Trump supported Putin's idea of a long-term peace treaty without a ceasefire. The second key issue was the territories. Zelensky is not willing to discuss handing over Donetsk region to the occupying country. Here, the Ukrainian constitution stands in a way as it makes it impossible to surrender or sell the territory of a sovereign state. Overall, Zelensky is only willing to discuss territorial issues during a trilateral meeting between Ukraine, the US, and Russia. Moreover, Ukrainians have not heard any details about the security guarantees that should protect our country from further aggressive actions by Russia. Ukraine's accession to the EU could be part of these guarantees. The president also noted that he is grateful to all of Europe for supporting the Ukrainian people and their desire for a just end to the war.
And the fact that President Trump mentioned a signal about security guarantees. For me, that's much more important than Putin's opinions, because Putin won't provide any security guarantees. Security guarantees mean a strong army. Only Ukraine can provide that. As for funding this army, I believe only Europe can provide that. Weapons for this army. Those can come from our domestic production or European production. But there are some scarce items that only the United States of America has. That's why I consider security guarantees.
Many hands make light work. Zelensky won't be going to meet Trump alone. Tomorrow, the president of Ukraine will head to the US together with European leaders. The following have already confirmed they will accompany the Ukrainian president to the US: NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, French President Emmanuel Macron, Finnish President Alexander Stubb, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, and UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer. Representatives from Poland, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania are also expected. For the Europeans, it is important to discuss security guarantees, support for Ukraine, and further steps toward resolving the war. For Zelensky, this is already his fourth trip to see Trump in the past year, and it is clearly going to be the most tense one yet. Western media report that there will be none of the royal visit symbolism for the president of Ukraine, as there was for the Russian dictator. The procedure will be official. The main challenge remains the pressure on Kyiv to accept conditions that could change our future. Territory, church, and language. Western media have published Putin's demands in Alaska. In particular, the Russian dictator rejects a ceasefire before a peace agreement is reached and demands that Ukraine withdraw its defense forces from Donetsk and Luhansk regions. In exchange, Russia will freeze the front line in the south and is allegedly ready to return small occupied areas of Sumy and Kharkiv regions. Also, according to Putin's wishes, Ukraine must grant legal status to the Russian language and the Russian Orthodox Church and renounce joining NATO. But Moscow is still willing to consider some security guarantees for Kyiv, possibly with a mechanism resembling NATO's Article 5. In return, Putin seeks official recognition from the civilized world of Russia's sovereignty over Crimea and the lifting of at least some economic sanctions. Importantly, this information is mostly based on discussions among European leaders, the United States and Ukraine. And most likely, surprises from the Kremlin are still ahead. Meanwhile, the results of the summit in Alaska have already been commented on live on CNN by the U.S. Special Envoy, Steve Witkoff. Supposedly, Russia has agreed not to fully seize Ukraine. And that's already an outcome. He also added that Moscow has allegedly made concessions regarding 5 of our regions and mentioned, so to speak, reliable security guarantees from America. What exactly that will be is still unknown. In return, Russia will write into its constitution that it will not attack EU countries. Vikov also noted that the issue of exchanging territories under Ukrainian control was not raised at Friday's meeting. But Trump plans to discuss this with Zelensky as soon as tomorrow. You can feel the atmosphere of tomorrow's meeting even through Trump's post on the social network Truth Social. The American president wrote that Ukraine must be prepared to lose part of its territory to Russia. Otherwise, the longer the war drags on, the more land Ukraine will continue to lose, writes the head of the White House. And what do you think about all this? What do you think the outcome of tomorrow's meeting will be? And will the Ukrainian and European leaders be able to convince Trump to protect Ukraine's interests? Share your thoughts in the comments below this video. And don't forget to support us with a like and a subscription if you haven't already. In the meantime, I'll continue with the broadcast. The Russians continue to terrorize Ukrainians with nighttime attacks. Today, the enemy army launched an Iskander missile and 60 attack drones mixed with decoy UAVs, according to the Air Force. The drones were launched from Kursk, Bryansk, Milarovo, Primorsko-Akhtarsk, and Shadolovo. 40 of them were successfully neutralized by the defenders of Ukraine's skies. Another 20 drones and 1 missile struck 12 locations in the frontline areas of Kharkiv, Donetsk, and Dnipropetrovsk regions. An explosion occurred today during the day in Kharkiv. Preliminarily, there were no casualties or injuries, but in Kupiansk, a man was injured as a result of an enemy airstrike. And there was another injured person in Novokazaka, Donetsk region. There, 2 people were killed and 4 were wounded. The Russians attacked Kostantinivka. There, 2 apartment buildings and several private homes were damaged. In Sloviansk, about a dozen buildings were destroyed. The Russians also attacked Chernihiv region with drones. In the Novorossiversky district, warehouses caught fire due to the shelling. Kharkivshina was also hit by an enemy attack. There, too, warehouse facilities were damaged. There were no casualties. 2 districts in Dnipropetrovsk region came under fire. A fire broke out. Homes and cars were burning. The occupiers struck Nikopol district with Grad rockets. 5 private houses were damaged. They attacked Sinomikivsky district with drones, destroying private homes and infrastructure. Over the past week, our soldiers managed to recapture several settlements and actively advance further, liberating Ukrainian land. From August 4th to 16th, the armed forces of Ukraine cleared the following settlements in Donetsk region of occupiers: Khruzk, Rubizn, Novovodian, Petrivka, Vasil, Zolodyi Kolodias, and Pokrovsk, according to the General Staff. The armed forces advanced in several locations along the northern Slobozansky direction, specifically by a distance of 1 to 2.5 kilometers in the areas of Yablonivka, Oleksivka, and Unikivka in the Sumy region. Our soldiers are stabilizing the situation in the Dobropilia area after the Russians attempted to break through on the Pokrovsk sector. There, the occupiers are surrendering in groups. To drive the enemy from our land, the defense forces are using various means of destruction. For example, in the village of Vasil in the Pokrovsk direction, our soldiers were assisted by machine gun robots in destroying the invaders. The soldiers of the 93rd Brigade showed a video of the village being cleared by these robots. The situation in the Kharkiv region remains difficult. According to the analytical portal Deep State, the enemy has occupied the village of Zeleny High there and has also advanced near Lozova and Tapovia Yar. This is already in the Donetsk region. A Ukrainian drone has once again captured a Russian soldier. The Predator Brigade of the Patrol Police carried out a unique operation. On the Turkish front, which is defended by the Predators, a pair of enemy assault troops tried to sneak up on the position. They were spotted, and the defenders started dropping munitions from drones. Both were wounded. One of them, without much hesitation, shoots himself. The other one raises his hands and signals to our drone operators that he's ready to surrender. They drop them a note. Want to live? Follow the drone. That's how the guy was led out to the Ukrainian positions. It turned out that the burly Russian from Kazan, nicknamed Rugby Player, had played professionally for Russia. He has children, but is divorced from his wife. His new girlfriend suggested he make some money at war when he got into debt. He's not here for an exchange. He knows they'll just send him back into the meat grinder.
Thank you to the Predator Brigade for saving my life, especially to the Bomber Ninja.
And now about enemy losses. In the past day alone, Russian invaders have lost 900 soldiers killed and wounded. Overall, according to the General Staff, since the start of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, the enemy's army has decreased by 1,069,950 soldiers. Our defenders have also smashed up the enemy's equipment. In the fighting, more than 11,000 tanks and over 23,000 armored combat vehicles have been destroyed, as well as 31,589 enemy artillery systems, nearly 1,500 multiple rocket launch systems, 1,208 air defense systems, and 51,528 tactical level drones have been neutralized. To date, 422 Russian planes and 340 helicopters have been shot down. And at sea, 28 ships and boats and 1 submarine have been neutralized. An explosive surprise from the main intelligence directorate. Ukrainian intelligence operatives destroyed a Russian ammunition depot, along with the occupiers themselves, in Melitopol. Video confirmation has already appeared on social media. It blew up at the very moment when an enemy truck carrying personnel drove into the industrial zone where the military were stationed. This happened yesterday. The fire from the explosion spread to the ammunition depot, and sounds of secondary detonations could be heard. It is reported that at least 6 Russian Marines were killed, as well as members of the UAV crew from the so-called Kadyrov Battalion Akhmet Vostok. The exact number of irrecoverable and sanitary losses among the Russian occupiers is still being determined, according to the Defense Intelligence of Ukraine. However, it is known that these very militants were sent by the Kremlin to reinforce the Zaporizhzhia front. The main intelligence directorate also carried out operations in Russia. Last night, drones attacked a key railway station in the Voronezh region. TSN was informed about this by its own sources in the Defense Intelligence of Ukraine. Explosions and the work of air defense were heard in Voronezh, as well as in Rosaj, Ostrogazk, and Lysky, where drones attacked the largest railway hub of the southeastern branch.
Aggression.
Locals are sharing footage of the attack on social media, saying they heard at least 6 explosions. This is also confirmed by the regional governor, who said that it was the air defense in action and that debris from one of the drones damaged a power line in Lysky, causing train delays. But in the videos published by the Russians, it's clear that not only debris landed on their railway station. Drones actually made it there. There was also a fire today in the occupied Luhansk region. There, Ukrainian partisans struck at Russian logistics. Unknown individuals blew up a relay cabinet on the railway, which the occupiers usually used to transport equipment, ammunition, and fuel to the front. As a result of the sabotage, train traffic was halted. This caused disruptions in the delivery of military cargo. And later it became known that all of this was the work of the partisan movement, Atesh, who for years have been secretly sabotaging the enemy army in the temporarily occupied territories. You can't even get a drink or go to the bathroom. The water situation in occupied Donetsk is still critical. There is simply no water. They supply it once every 3 days, for 4 hours. And the quality is such that this water can only be used for technical needs. It's dangerous to wash with it, let alone drink it. It's a health hazard. It's cloudy and has sediment. Or instead of water, some kind of chemicals come out of the tap. Locals complain. But they charge as if it were drinking water. To somehow meet people's need for drinking water, they deliver it with water trucks. The causes of the water crisis are the reduced number of reservoirs due to the war and the drying up of the existing ones. In addition, the water pipeline that supplied water to the Donbass from territory controlled by Kiev was destroyed during the fighting. And there's also heavy industry, which consumes a lot of water. Since 2014, from the moment Donetsk was occupied, the Russian authorities have done almost nothing to improve the water situation. Agriculture is suffering as well. Donetsk and the region are literally drying up. Recently, social media was shocked by a video showing local residents in Donetsk collecting water from puddles after the rain for their own needs. So far, the local authorities haven't come up with anything better than installing vending machines with bottled water around the city, the price of which is several times higher than in other regions controlled by the occupiers. Makiivka, Mariupol, Torres, KRY, and other settlements are also suffering from a lack of water. Mass protests in Serbia have escalated into violent clashes with law enforcement. Protesters hurled pyrotechnics at the city administration of Valjevo and the office of the ruling Serbian party. Activists are demanding early parliamentary elections. There are also protests taking place in Belgrade. In the capital, protesters tried to set fire to the Progressive Party's building using fireworks and burned its flag. Stones and iron rods were thrown at the security forces. In response, the police used tear gas and batons. In the past few days, dozens of civilians and law enforcement officers have been injured. Let me remind you, protests in Serbia have been going on for 9 months now. The confrontation began with the collapse of the railway station in the town of Novi Sad on November 1st last year. 16 people died at that time. According to critics, the tragedy happened because of corruption and incompetence among officials. Vučić, who has been running the country for 12 years, is also accused of ties to organized crime, violence against political opponents, and suppressing freedom of speech. The Serbian president himself considers members of the anti-government movement to be radical terrorists and claims that they are trying to overthrow the state.